One of those documents is called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Have you heard of it?
Yep.
It does not say, whereas Canada is founded on the principles that recognize the supremacy of the Prime Minister.
Amen.
I would like to introduce our first speaker. Peter used to be a part of the Pushlands Fire Department. However, on October 15th, 2021, he was fired from his job for the apparent crime of posting to YouTube, where he speaks out against the township's mandatory vaccine policies. Since then, he and his wife, Janet, who are both wonderful people who I just had the pleasure meeting, have been to Ottawa 3 times to join the Freedom Convoy. Please come on up, Peter.
I thought about coming here today to tell you a little bit about how I got fired from my job as a part-time firefighter. I thought I could tell you about our trips to Ottawa and tell you about the counter-protester who stole my daughter's flag and dragged it through the mud. But instead, I thought I would ask you some questions. Why are you here today? Why are you still waving your flags?
It's not over.
Why are you still carrying your posters? Why are you still talking about freedom? Don't you know that the vast majority of Canadians have already done the right thing and gotten vaccinated? Don't you know that you are among the fringe minority and you hold unacceptable views?
Yeah, woo! Happy for that.
Don't you know that you have all but been found guilty by our news media for chanting for freedom? Why is freedom important to you? The mask mandates here in Ontario end tomorrow. You've won. You've won. You've gotten through to the politicians. You've gotten through to the so-called health experts. Yet why do you keep coming out talking about freedom? Why is freedom important to you? Isn't freedom just a preference? Just a matter of taste? I mean, maybe I like country music and you like the blues. Maybe I like Thai food, but you prefer Indian. Is freedom not just a matter of taste? Take it or leave it? Maybe I like freedom and you prefer being told what to do. Or maybe freedom is something deeper. Maybe it runs deeper to our core of what it is to be human. Why do we find it offensive when one country inflicts its will on another? Why do we find it offensive when people inflict their will unjustly on other people? When that happens, we call it a crime. Why do we find it offensive when governments unjustly inflict their will on us? What is it about this that offends us to our core?
Everything.
Maybe we believe that freedom is something more than just a matter of taste. Maybe we believe that there is something sacred about the individual. Maybe we believe that freedom is intrinsically part of who we are as men and women. Why is freedom important to you? There was a man named Viktor Frankl who spent some time in the least free places on earth, known perhaps to history. In these places, his captors worked really hard to take away his freedom. They took away his freedom to move, to speak, to even to live or die. These were horrific places. One of the places he was called Auschwitz. Against all odds, Frankl escaped from Auschwitz, or he survived Auschwitz. And he went on to write a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And in it, he talks about how at its core, there is something inside each of us that no matter what, we desire freedom. They could take away all kinds of things from Franco, but they could not take away his freedom to choose how he was going to respond in that moment. Try as they might, they could knock down the fires of freedom. They could get it down to the tiniest little flame, but they could not completely extinguish that desire for freedom. A desire to freedom goes to the very core of what it is to be human. The founding fathers in the United States knew this. In the preamble to their Declaration of Independence, they say, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." But we are not in the United States. We are here in Canada. And although our histories are different, we are founded on similar principles. And we too have sacred documents that stand at the core of what it is to be Canadian. One of those documents is called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Have you heard of it?
Yep.
The Charter of Rights and Freedoms also has a preamble, and it goes like this. Whereas Canada is founded on the principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. Notice what it does not say. It does not say, whereas Canada is founded on the principles that recognize the supremacy of the Prime Minister.
Amen.
It does not say, whereas Canada is founded on the principles that recognize the supremacy of the news media. It does not say that whereas Canada is founded on the principles that recognize the supremacy of health experts. No, friends, it doesn't say those. It says Canada is founded on the principles that recognize the supremacy of God. Now, I'll spare you the sermon about what that might mean, but notice this. The Charter is pointing to something bigger. The Charter is pointing to something that goes beyond our governments, that goes beyond our healthcare experts, that goes beyond our news media, even goes beyond our monarch, the Queen. It's pointing to something higher. I happen to belong to a faith that recognizes that all people are created in the image of God. Perhaps you share that, perhaps you don't. And perhaps that's where we get these ideas of freedom. Perhaps it's something about the divine that is in each of us that we hold to be sacred and that cannot be infringed upon by any man, woman, or government. And that's why we are afforded our freedom of conscience to believe what we choose to believe. We are afforded a freedom of speech to speak boldly what we believe to be true. And we have the freedom to peacefully assemble with whomever we want to boldly proclaim those truths. Why is freedom important to you? Freedom is not a matter of taste or personal preference. Freedom is not merely a political idea. And freedom is only dangerous to those who would prefer to have unjust authority over us. Freedom is essential. It is at our very core. It is inalienable, inviolable, and sacrosanct. And no man or woman or government ever has the right to unjustly infringe on those rights. It is true that freedom It is true that freedom is the core to the founding of this country. That much is true. But more important, freedom is core to who we are as men and women. The desire for freedom is intrinsic. Therefore, when you stand for freedom, you stand for humanity itself. And I stand for freedom. Now, what do you stand for?